Based on what we know, do you see some possible cult dynamics with this family, with the little bit that we know?
I definitely think that this family seems like some kind of single family cult, although it is hard to tell.
The school attendance officer opened the file and just stared at it. 6 children. Enrolled for 1 year. Then gone. Not transferred, not withdrawn, not registered anywhere else. Just erased from every system that should have tracked them. That single empty file is why this case is going to change how you think about what happened inside that house.
I definitely think that this family seems like some kind of single family cult.
Mystery surrounds the Ciders family, a family of 16 children who prosecutors say were kept hidden from the outside world. But now, one expert is making a disturbing claim. She believes the Ciders family may have been living in a cult. I'm Anjanette Levy, and this is Crime Fix.
I have to start by correcting an assumption I made when this story first broke. I talked about this family on this channel as if the core problem was neglect. 17 children, squalor, developmental delays, a mother who started giving birth when she was still a child herself. I focused on the physical conditions and the obvious failure of every institution that should have seen them. But I kept circling something that did not fit. Why would 4 adults, 2 of them with no apparent criminal record, go to such extreme lengths to keep these children invisible? Hiding them from schools, from neighbors, from children's services. That is not just neglect. Neglect is passive. This was something active. And I should have said that sooner. We now know more. Not enough. But enough to make the shape of this thing visible. Gary Ciders Senior and his wife Christina. Their son Gary Jr. and his wife Elizabeth. 4 adults living under one roof for years. Elizabeth married Gary Jr. at 15. She likely became pregnant at 14. She gave birth to 18 children total. The math is brutal. That is a pregnancy nearly every single year since 2008. Her attorney has already told the court she viewed all children as a blessing from God. But a blessing does not require isolation. A blessing does not require hiding.
For years, 4 adult members of the Ciders family lived together under one roof. They lived as a family. Gary Ciders Senior and his wife, Christina Ciders, and their son, Gary Ciders Jr., and his wife, Elizabeth. Elizabeth Ciders, as we've been telling you, married into the Ciders family at the tender age of 15. She likely became pregnant with her first child when she was 14. So she and Gary Jr. were dating when she was 14. She's married at 15. She has her first child a couple of months later. And as we now know, she gave birth to 17 more after that. It seems like Elizabeth was a breeding machine. Did she want this? Did she want so many children? Her lawyer told a media outlet that she was open to having a large family, but 18 children? Tommy Stolle also said in the same interview with 10 TV that Elizabeth told him that all children are a blessing from God. Wouldn't you like to know what else Elizabeth Ciders said? Did she willingly get pregnant so many times? Did she want to be pregnant every year since 2008?
The prosecutor used the word hidden. Not neglected. Not unsupervised. Hidden. That is a legal word with a specific meaning. It implies intent. It implies a coordinated effort by multiple adults to keep children outside the reach of anyone who might ask questions. When 4 adults share that intent, you are no longer looking at a dysfunctional household. You are looking at something more deliberate. The school records prove it. The 6 oldest children were enrolled in an online school in August of 2020. The oldest was 12, the youngest 6. Before that, nothing. No records anywhere. The next year, they were supposed to attend elementary school in person. They never showed up. Not once. Not one day. No notice was ever given that they were being homeschooled instead. Gary Jr. himself has no school records in the district at all. His mother's social media pages are full of crosses and religious imagery. But the children were not being educated in any faith-based program that left a paper trail.
Married at 15, the Gallia County Local School District was notified that Elizabeth was withdrawing from school to be homeschooled at that time. How was a 15-year-old new mom being homeschooled? I know that I'd like the answer to that question. Was Christina Ciders, her new mother-in-law, homeschooling her? If so, what was the curriculum? And was religion a part of that curriculum? Christina Ciders' Facebook pages have religious imagery, crosses, and depictions of Jesus. This was a family that spent a lot of time together, a family that the prosecutor says hid children together. And we know from the superintendent of the Gallia Local School District that Gary Ciders Jr. never attended the school district. There's no record of him there. And the 6 oldest Ciders children were enrolled in online school in Gallia County on August 26, 2020 for the 2020-2021 school year. The next year, they were supposed to attend Attaville Elementary School, but they never showed up for school. Not once, not one day. And they were never seen in Gallia County again. There was no notice provided to any school district that the children were being homeschooled. Instead, the prosecutors said they were hidden, living an insular life, living in squalor. The question is why? Why was this family set on being alone by themselves, aside from the obvious that they may have been trying to escape children's services caseworkers? Was something more going on? Elizabeth's brother, Jeremy, posted on Facebook shortly after her arrest that she had been indoctrinated. He didn't say into what, but he claimed she had chosen the Ciders family. Were the Ciders functioning as a family who refused to live apart? Did they have a belief system that tied them together? Or were they, as some experts have suggested, a type of cult?
Let me tell you what the expert now says.
I want to talk a little bit about your background and what you can share with us about what makes you an expert in this area. Talk to us about how you survived being in a cult.
Yeah, so I was born 3 generations into a cult called the Children of God. The Children of God is the cult that used prostitution, religious prostitution, and ultimately promoted pedophilia amongst its members, all while posing as this just sort of evangelical Christian missionary group that was preparing the world for the end of days. So I was born in, my mother was only 14 when she got pregnant with me. She was born in, and my grandfather was high up in the leadership, still currently runs the money for what is left of this cult. And I never really believed in any of it. And I sort of just felt the need to survive these people until I was able to engineer getting kicked out at the age of 15. And I did that very dramatically by climbing over the commune wall and going out into the world. We were in Mexico at the time in order to see a boy. And, big bad rule of cults is fellowshipping with the outsider. Usually, isolation is a big part of controlling people. And so I was kicked out. I was sort of tossed into a completely different world with a older stepsister in Houston, Texas, who was kind enough to take me in, and just sort of had to figure out the world as it was coming at me. Went from
Daniela Mestyanek Young was born into the Children of God cult. 3 generations deep. Her mother was 14 when she became pregnant with her. She escaped by climbing over a commune wall in Mexico at 15.
Like never being in school before to 4,000 student high school. Very, very intense. By the time I graduated college, I had decided to go into the military. This was in part because of a 1-1 cult that I entered into in college. Something that tends to happen to us when we get out of high control environments is often we go looking subconsciously for this same kind of high control environment and leader who's going to fix us or help us. And so I fell prey to a very toxic relationship in college. And I also think I just didn't know how to be in the world on my own. And so looking at the military felt very appealing for me. And I went into the military. I became an intelligence officer, which is the expert on the enemy. And we were in the so-called war on terror. And so I was trained in anti-terrorism. I deployed twice to Afghanistan. And ended up spending 6.5 years as an officer in the military. When I left the military, I would also say I saw the parallels the whole time, right? Like first day of basic training, I was like, oh, this is a cult. Okay, I get what we're doing here. I'm going to be good at this. I just need to buy in. I need to be a group player, tamp down my individuality. All of these things that I knew subconsciously but didn't know actually as an expert yet. During COVID, I decided to go back to graduate school, and I ended up going to Harvard and getting a degree in organizational psychology. And I really focused on cults and the military. And in this process, understood that I was an expert on bad leaders and bad groups, and I wanted to keep doing that. And also, I would say I've been reading everything I could on cults since I was 22 years old, because I was just trying to understand what had happened to me and what I had been through. And that was when I also started noticing all of the patterns. So today I'm an organizational psychologist. I've written 2 books about cults, which is my memoir, Uncultured, where I parallel growing up in the Children of God cult to then being in the military. And then The Culting of America. And this is my research book that I did, which is I have a 10-part definition of cult, 10 parts of group behavior that cults use to manipulate you. But I show it to you in cults, in the military, and then in a lot of American groups, because we have a lot of coercive tactics going on in our society, whether we choose to label something a cult or not.
Interesting.
She later served as a military intelligence officer, studied organizational psychology at Harvard, and wrote 2 books on cult dynamics. Her assessment of the Ciders family is direct. She believes this looks like a single family cult.
So to really dig into this issue of what makes a cult as it relates to the Ciders family, I want to bring in Daniela Mestyanek Young. She is a survivor of a cult and also has written a couple of books on the topic. Daniela, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Daniela, first of all, tell me a little bit about how you would define a cult. What makes a cult or makes a group of people labeled a cult?
So the very simplest definition of cult, I would say, is a group, which has to be 2 or more people. And you can have a 2-person cult, but it's a group that is using coercive and manipulative tactics in order to exploit you.
A cult does not require robes or a compound or a charismatic leader on a stage.
It's interesting to me that it can be 2 or more people. So you could have a cult that maybe is even 3 people.
You can. You know, in my book on cult tactics, one of the things I talk about that so many people relate to is that you can have a 1-1 cult, something that's often called an abusive relationship, where there is the same amount of control, the same amount of engineering of sort of a fake world for you to live in and worldview for you to believe in. You can have single family cults as well. And the Westboro Baptist Church is one of the most famous examples of that.
It requires 2 or more people using coercive and manipulative tactics to exploit others. The exploitation can be labor. It can be control. It can be the use of bodies for reproduction. In this case, 18 pregnancies from one woman, isolated inside one house, with the children kept from every system that could have intervened. That is exploitation on a scale that is hard to absorb. Elizabeth's brother posted after her arrest that she had been indoctrinated. He did not say into what, but he said she chose the Ciders family. That word, chose, is doing a lot of work. A 14-year-old girl being courted by a family that would later hide her children from the outside world is not making a free choice. She is being recruited. Cults target young people precisely because their identities are still forming. They target people in moments of transformation.
Somebody who's young and impressionable, a 14-year-old girl, maybe somebody who can be drawn into something like this, into a a single family cult, especially because, maybe their home circumstance isn't the best. Do cults typically look to recruit members who seem to have, some type of weakness, or, do cult leaders exploit people who they perceive as being malleable and things of that nature?
Yes. And also young people, right? The Children of God famously was recruiting 13 and 14 and 15-year-olds into their cult, as have many other cults. The military recruits 16 and 17-year-olds. So getting people while they're young and very malleable is definitely a part of cult strategies, as is getting people pregnant very, very young and multiple times, because it keeps you tied to the cult. And there's a stereotype that cults are recruiting weak-minded people, which most of us experts don't like, because truly anyone can be manipulated by a cult. But one of the things I have found is that anywhere in the space of personal transformation, cults are or abusive people, predators will show up. So when you have, and a lot of these happen when you're young, when you're leaving your parents' home, when you're going to school, you're starting a diet or exercise program, but basically there's something about your life that you want to transform. A lot of predators will show up. And cults absolutely will focus in on what you are discontent about in your life and play that up as a big problem. And then they will sell you a solution. And so my personal experience, how I ended up in a cult, is my grandfather in the 70s had a bad LSD trip where he met Satan. And the next day he was sitting in a park in LA with his head in his hands, as one does after they meet Satan, I presume. And along come the happy, smiling, guitar-playing children of God, right? And that was his story that he told, and he went off with them for the rest of his life.
A girl on the edge of adulthood, perhaps unhappy at home, perhaps searching for belonging.
But I always like to bring people's focus to the fact that those 4 happy, smiley cult recruiters were walking through a park looking for the guy with his head in his hands, right? They weren't looking for a group of happy, well-adjusted people. They were looking for people who they thought had a problem that they could then set up a solution to exploit.
I mean, that makes total sense. It makes total sense. How do you advise people, like anybody watching this, how would you advise somebody to maybe recognize those signs that they are being maybe manipulated or recruited to become part of a cult, and to maybe resist that?
Yeah, so one of the things is just this statement I try to tell people a lot, that anywhere in the space of personal transformation, cults will try to recruit you. When you are trying to change yourself, you're already willing to change. And so it's easy for predators to zero in on that. And so you just need to be sort of on the alert all of the time. And I think one of the ultimate ways to protect yourself is to know that you can never devote yourself 100% to anything. Like, you should not be devoting yourself 100% to any person, place, thing, or idea outside of yourself. And I think that's hard, because in American culture, we are told to devote ourselves 100% to things, 110% even. But really, in order to keep yourself safe, it's, watch your time, watch your labor, and make sure that you're never 100% in anything, because that becomes isolation, it becomes exploitation, it becomes all of these.
The children of God did the same thing for decades, walking through parks looking for the person, sitting alone with their head in their hands. The court has now ordered competency evaluations for all 4 adults. Elizabeth's attorney has raised serious concerns about her mental health. Evaluations for not guilty by reason of insanity were ordered as well. That does not mean any of them will be found incompetent or insane. It means the defense teams saw something in those jailhouse conversations that made them question whether their clients understand reality. That is consistent with cult indoctrination. People inside high control groups often cannot perceive their own circumstances clearly. They have been taught to distrust outside judgment. They have been taught that the outside world is the threat.
She's an expert in cults and their dynamics and will join me shortly to discuss cults in this case. Elizabeth's lawyer has serious concerns about her mental health. What has he observed, and what has Elizabeth told him? Last week, Tommy Stolley asked Judge Rogers to order a competency evaluation for Elizabeth, and in the alternative, an evaluation to determine whether she is not guilty by reason of insanity, meaning does she have a mental condition that would make it so she didn't understand the difference between right and wrong when her children were being mistreated. Now Judge Rogers has ordered both evaluations to be conducted in the next 30 days. Once the evaluations are complete, a hearing will have to be scheduled. Similar examinations have been ordered for Gary Senior, and competency evaluations have been ordered for Christina and Gary Jr. There is something the defense attorneys have seen that has prompted them to request these evaluations. And let's say one or more members of the Ciders family are found to be incompetent to stand trial. It doesn't mean their competency can't be restored with therapy and medication.
Here is the pattern that makes this case different from ordinary neglect. The children were not simply left home while adults worked. The adults were present. The children were not failing to attend school because no one cared. Someone actively withdrew the oldest children from the only school that ever enrolled them, and then simply stopped answering. Someone made sure no new school ever received a request for records. Someone maintained that invisibility across county lines and multiple years. That is not chaos. That is structure.